Welcome to Fireside Nets. We are your home for everything Brooklyn Nets news, reactions, information, game breakdowns, and so much more. We are your hosts. I'm Spen, he's Pete, and today we are joined by none other than senior Nets writer for New York Daily News, CJ Holmes. CJ, welcome to the pod.
Hey, thanks for having me. First time participant, so go easy on me.
You'll be good. You're fine.
You'll be a recurring guest in no time. That's what we do here at Fireside. We take someone who's never been on the show, and in a month they've been on the show like 3 times.
Well, that sounds good to me.
All right, perfect. Let's get into it. Pete, what do you got for CJ today?
All right. Obviously, you covered the Warriors for a couple of years, but I was really curious. What's the perspective of the Nets like from the outside? Obviously, there was the big 3 drama. That's well past us. You've just, like you said, you just kind of jumped into the job. But what's the perspective from the outside? And now that you're kind of following the team, has it changed at all for you?
Well, in terms of outside perspective, the big 3 drama is like, the most, I would say a lot of people outside of, Brooklyn, outside of New York, outside of the fan base were always following, Kyrie's antics, James Harden wanting out, KD jumping ship. I mean, that was really newsworthy stuff for a while now. Outside of that, I didn't know too much about the organization other than a couple times I covered games at Barclays Center, which is, in my opinion, just as beautiful as a Chase Center out there in San Francisco. But, since I've been on the beat, I guess one thing that stood out is just how, welcoming, the entire organization is. We were at shoot around the other day and, I walk in, waiting for guys to, come up for their interviews. And, one of the PR guys walked Sean Marks right up to me. He wanted to introduce himself, and that meant a lot to me, because he didn't have to do that. Who am I, right? But I really appreciated that. From everything I've seen, it seems like a pretty well-ran organization. I know from a PR standpoint, it was a little stressful on those guys during the KD, Harden, Kyrie era. But those guys run a pretty tight ship there in Brooklyn. And I'm just looking forward to seeing, my relationships grow with the players, front office, different people, on the PR media team for the Nets. As we move forward.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I feel like you're not the only person to say glowing words about Sean Marks. Everyone that comes on this show just raves about him if they've met him. Fans say he comes up to them in the Brooklyn Brigade section and he hangs out with them pregame. So it's good to hear someone else coming on the show and giving Sean Marks some nice words there. Let's get into the performance of this team so far. 12-9 through 21 games with an upcoming matchup tonight against the Kings. For all those listening on Tuesday, we apologize for not recording at 2 a.m. CJ, what has surprised you most about this Nets team so far?
What has been so surprising about this team is despite having so many players dealing with injuries in and out of the lineups, that they're still sitting at 12-9, and they seem to be getting better. It makes you wonder what this team can be when they're at full strength. I think head coach Jacques Vaughn said it himself. I think they've only been completely healthy for 1 game this season. And, and there's a lot to like about the pieces that they do have out there. I'm really impressed with the depth on the wings. You got guys like Royce O'Neal and Dorian Finney-Smith shooting career best, having like career best seasons from beyond the arc. While I do think that this team is lacking in some point guard play, one can assume that Ben Simmons can, help take the creation to another level when he's healthy and back on the court. Spencer Dinwiddie has filled in pretty well in that role, I would say. And then you got a guy like Dennis Smith Jr., who, jack of all trades, master of none, but he just keeps bringing energy every night at both ends of the floor. He's getting stops. He's getting dunks. He's doing all those, that little, the little physical things that are conducive to winning. Overall, I think the Nets have a pretty balanced roster. Like I said, I do want to see another guy step up as another primary creator. But outside of that, they have a pretty balanced roster. I think this is a season where Mikal Bridges can make his first All-Star team. He's been absolutely fantastic in the games that I've covered. I think he had, 32 in the first half the other night. And he just seems to keep getting better and better in terms of his efficiency. So overall, I like what I see with this team. I know it's early, but I think they're a playoff team. And then, once you get into that tournament, anything can happen.
Is there anyone that's kind of surprised you early that, maybe you saw this guy for a couple of years and now seeing him close up in Brooklyn, it's been like, wow, this guy, excuse me. Wow, this guy's like really good.
For me, that guy has to be Royce O'Neal. I watched a lot of his games when he was playing out in Utah. Always came across as one of those, glue guys, one of those, high-level role players. But, this season with the Nets, the guy's been a fringe starter, if you ask me. That's just how well he's played. Like I mentioned before, shooting career best from behind the arc. He can get it done defensively, and I just feel like he's just so efficient with everything he does offensively. And, you can never have too many guys like that on your roster. And, I think that this Nets team, especially on the wings, have a bunch of them.
Yeah, the thing I love about Royce is any role he's been asked to do, whether it's start, come off the bench, run the point, guard the big man, he's done it. And it really hasn't affected his offense. Like, yeah, he's been hot and cold, but for the most part, he's been consistent. So I think in a weird way, that would be my answer too, CJ. If I can pick one guy that surprised me this year, listen, it might be Royce or DFS. It would be a tie between those two because I did not expect Dorian Finney-Smith to shoot as well as he's been shooting.
I guess you can throw Dennis Smith Jr. in that category too. This is a guy, former high draft pick of the Dallas Mavericks. He was forced out of Dallas after they drafted Luka Doncic, bounced around the league. But he's a guy that, although he hasn't found a stable home in this league, he's always had a job, it seems like. And I think that, kind of speaks to a lot of guys' character, guy who got drafted high. Still, he's able to put that pride aside and to keep working. And, again, it's super early, but this is a guy that's on a one-year deal that I think in a lot of ways is outplaying his value. Will he find a home in Brooklyn? I guess we'll see as the season continues, but he's a very good fit on this roster and what they're looking to do.
Not Lonnie Walker, though?
Lonnie Walker has been surprised. That's the thing. There's just so many surprises, there's so many guys on this roster. I'm like, oh, wow, you're showing me something I haven't seen. You got a guy like Lonnie Walker who is, you guys know that Big Bird meme where he just kicks the door down? That's how Lonnie Walker's been this year. Another former first-round pick, had his ups and downs in San Antonio last year, inconsistent minutes with the Lakers. And this year, he's been healthy for the most part up until this point, right? This is a guy who at one time was leading the league in 20-point games off the bench. I'm not sure if he still does. Going to have to scour Basketball Reference to find that one. But, it seems like Lonnie in this role on this team, it seems like his production is sustainable. Now, granted, when you got Ben Simmons coming back eventually and, there's definitely going to be some lineup shakeups. Minutes are going to be here and there, but in the minutes that Lonnie has given this team, he's given them a much needed scoring punch off the bench, right? And you just got to love it, not just because of what he's doing on the court, but just his story and what he's been through. And another guy like Dennis Smith, who's really selling into his own in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I feel like there's no wrong answer to that question. And I think about this team and I try to put my finger on what the theme of this team is, CJ. Has it been resiliency? Has it been something else? What is the theme surrounding the Nets so far in this young season?
Well, there is one phrase that has been, shared a lot in recent, interviews, and that's radical truth. So essentially the meaning of that is that guys are just straight up honest. They hold people accountable. They tell you, the whole mantra there is to, tell somebody the truth, no matter how bad it may sound. And, holding guys accountable in that way, I think that is a reason why you've seen this team plays so well despite having guys in and out of the lineups. Because, I mean, really that's the only inconsistent thing you can say about this team this season. They've been consistently one of the better offenses in the league. They've consistently had success with different lineups. And, I think that all just draws back to that idea of holding guys accountable and, leading by example in that way. Does that make sense? So radical truth. Yeah, it's something that a lot of guys have been saying a lot lately. Of course, that's something they want to keep in-house, but, it got out. So guys are being radically honest with each other, and it's paying dividends in that locker room.
I did not expect that answer. That was basically honesty, radical truth. That's high praise. Good for the Brooklyn Nets being able to tell each other like it is, I guess. Mikal Bridges, I want to talk about him. He has been stellar as of late. He's had a good season so far, but he's gone off these last several games. Where do you see his ceiling? And this may be a stupid question, but right now, is he the clear-cut number one scoring option on this team?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And it all comes down to his efficiency. As Mikal was telling us the other day, he's always been an efficient player, and you can even follow that back to his time in Phoenix and his days in Villanova. I actually got to cover Mikal a little bit during his rookie year when I was in Phoenix. But the guy is just doing what he does at like a higher volume, if that makes sense, because he's always been this guy. But you got to understand, in Phoenix, he had guys like Devin Booker, primarily a guy like Devin Booker, taking a lot of shots. And, Mikal wasn't asked to carry a team scoring wise, right? They had Booker for that, Ayton, guys like that, right? But now in Brooklyn, he's being asked to do that. And, he has taken his scoring to another level without sacrificing the efficiency that's made him such a good player in the first place, all while still playing, at a very, very high defensive level at the other end of the court. You put it all together, you have one hell of a player, in my opinion. I think you have an all-star. I got to look at the different wings out in the East this year, but I think that Mikal has just as much of a chance as any other guy to make an all-star team this year in the Eastern Conference. What can his ceiling be? I don't know, but you got to think that he's getting pretty close to it the way he's been playing. Maybe he can grab a couple more rebounds a game. Maybe he can be more of a creator for this team, put the ball in his hands more, run him off ball screens, have him create for others, something of that nature. But I think that everything he's doing is exactly what this team needs him to do. And what makes this team so interesting, it's a team full of guys who can adjust to, whatever the situation calls for. And, Mikal's one of the best in the business at it.
You covered Steph Curry in Golden State, as I mentioned before. Do you see any similarities possibly between Steph Curry and Cam Thomas? Both guys kind of work out a lot. They pretty much chuck from three whenever they can, usually hit it. What do you think about them two? I know the games are different. Don't get me wrong. The games are different. But do you see any similarities between the two?
Maybe not too many. I've heard good things about Cam's work ethic. I haven't been here long enough to see it and appreciate it, but I have heard it, which is a good thing. And as everyone knows, Steph is one of the hardest workers in the game. It's been that way for a while now. But in terms of similarity, maybe just the fearlessness, right? The fearlessness, the belief in self. Cam isn't afraid to, let it fly no matter where he is on the court. Like you said, their games are different. I do think that Steph gets to the cup a little bit more than Cam. And in a couple games I've covered, I haven't seen a lot of Cam's shots. There's not a lot of variety in them. I feel like it's either a three-pointer or some type of like mid-range pull-up or some type of crazy off-balance one-legged spin shot or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I feel like Steph has a lot more in his bag right now, right? He's a lot more – I don't want to call Cam out of controls. I haven't gotten that impression. I don't think he's an out-of-control player. But I do think Steph is a lot more in control. But in terms of that fearlessness, that work ethic, I think some similarities can be drawn there.
Yeah, going back to Mikal Bridges for a minute. I think a big issue Net fans had with Mikal was that he wasn't per se that dog at the end of games. He wasn't super aggressive. You saw all these guys in Golden State that could have been a one option, like Klay Thompson, whatever, get the ball, big time clutch shots, and Bridges wasn't doing it. Now, I have to admit, he's been really playing super well the last week or two or whatever. What, I don't know, 15 games or whatever. Besides the point, do you think he has that gene in him to be that 1A superstar?
Maybe, maybe. He's definitely been showing it as of late. But the thing about this Nets team is there is no clear bona fide star. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to think, but I think there's only one player on this roster that's made an all-star team, and his back is injured currently. So with that being said, this is a type of team where I know there's a lot of teams with stars who kind of want to put the ball in their hands at the end of games. But, as we've already discussed, like, this team is full of guys who can make a play. This team is full of guys who can make a shot. So I think fans should worry less about can Mikal, be that guy that they can ride down the stretch of games, and appreciate the fact more that there's a lot of threats on this team and there's a lot of guys willing to look for that, perfect shot, down the stretch, because there's a lot of guys who can knock it down. It doesn't have to be Mikal. Mikal doesn't have to be that guy. If he had to be that guy, if that's what Coach Vaughn asked him to be, I'm sure he can be that guy. I mean, you saw it in the Atlanta game a couple of weeks ago, right? I mean, last week. But I think that fans should appreciate the fact more that there's a lot of playmakers on this team, and there doesn't have to be the pressure of that one singular player taking the last shot. There's a lot of guys who can make that last shot on this team.
You brought up that Atlanta shot, and this is the last Mikal question. Did you see that shot up close? Were you in Atlanta for that or no?
I was not in Atlanta. I was here. I was on that couch right over there with my dog.
How important did you think that moment was for Mikal, for him to hit that shot down the stretch to win the game against Trey, especially given what happened in their last matchup where him, Lonnie Walker, everyone pretty much missed down the stretch?
It was huge for him, especially considering the fact that entering the night, him and Cam Johnson had never won in Atlanta. So you could tell entering the game that, they had a chip on their shoulders. They wanted to get that monkey off their back, if you will. But it's huge, especially for a guy who's campaigning for his first all-star team, right? A lot of, it's still fan vote, right, for the starters, right? So fans want moments. Fans remember moments. They don't necessarily remember stats. They remember moments, right? So that was a moment for Mikal, and he's had a couple of moments like that this season. And, between now and the All-Star breaks, he keeps piling up those moments. I mean, he should hear his name called. I think he's deserving.
I don't know. When he took that shot, CJ and Pete, there was one other player, former Brooklyn Net, he reminded me of. I don't know. Maybe that was just me. Did you see it?
Little KD vibes in there?
A little straight from the hip? I don't know.
I mean, look, if you take both the numbers of both guys, right, and you just take the name off of it, it'd be hard. It'd be hard to determine who's who. And from what I understand, that's a comparison that's been made since Mikal was acquired by the Nets, right? As soon as he got traded here, the dude just came out of his shell and started going off, right? Because, that's, it's Mikal Bridges, man. Villanova pedigree. I used to cover the Cats, so I kind of know how they handle business out there in Villanova. Hard worker, class act. The guy just simply deserves all the success he's having, and it's great that he is now getting a chance to show, what he can do when given, more of a, when he's given a green light to score the ball.
Yeah, I think you just inspired a tweet. Who would you rather have, player A, player B? And I'd love to poll that, see how many people take Mikal's stats over KD's stats. That would be fun. I might have to tweet that later. All right, I wanted to switch over to the Nets fan base. People, around the league, they tend to argue about Nets fans not being real fans. The arena's a joke. Mainly Knicks fans say that. But now that you've covered the Nets for a little bit, can you please end this dog shit narrative that, there aren't real Nets fans, and tell the audience how special Barclays can be when the Brooklyn Nets are playing well and the arena's rocking.
Well, I will say this. I've enjoyed covering games at Barclays Center in terms of if I had to, put it in arena rankings, Barclays is definitely top 5 in the league for me. I do got to see more out of the fan base, although it could get a little rowdy in there when the team's on a run or getting stops, right? I haven't been the one sellout yet. I haven't seen it sold out yet. A lot of empty seats. So, the Nets fans that, are in the area, you guys need to get your butts into some seats and come support your team. But like I said, I've enjoyed Barclays Center. I don't want to turn the whole fan base against me already. Nets fans, you guys need to get to the arena, support your team, because it's a pretty solid product this year. And, if you guys can, if affordable, if you can get there, I think you'd like what you can see, and I'm sure the team will appreciate the support.
In defense of Nets fans out there, it's pretty cold outside. Wait till April, March. There will be sellout games when the Nets are closer to the playoffs. I can guarantee it. It'll happen. But yeah, it's cold outside. They a lot of them went to Florida. Just, they'll be back. All right. The Nets have a 5-game Western Conference road trip coming up, starting tonight against the Kings. They go to Phoenix to play the Suns, Denver, Golden State, and then Utah. Let's start with Pete. Pete, what will be the Nets record on this 5-game Western Conference road trip?
Oh, man. I think they're going to go 2-3. I really do. We usually have some issues out West. I could see a couple of games that we just get blown out in. I would like to, if they went 2-3, would you guys be happy with that? As a fan, I think I would take that. I would sign up for that right now. I really would, considering the talent.
Am
I going too low?
Look. Last year I covered a couple winless road trips with the Warriors, so you never want that, right? But 2-3, 3-2. I think there's a couple games in there that can go either way. But I don't necessarily think that's too low. But I think tonight's game in Sacramento will tell you a lot about the energy to bring with them out west and things of that nature, right? So right now I can tell you, just looking at the schedule right now at Sacramento, that one's tough. Wouldn't be surprised if they drop tonight. At Phoenix, those guys haven't even been healthy. But I think the Nets can get that game.
Aren't they all back now, though? Their big three? Aren't they all back?
Who knows? You guys have experience with.
I think they are.
Threes, so.
Just saying.
And even if they're back, though, that team just isn't playing with a great level of synergy right now because of guys who've been in and out. I don't think they're like the Nets in that regard, right?
That's fair.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So I could see them winning in Phoenix. Denver's been in a little bit of a slump lately. That could go either way. I think they'll get the Warriors, considering how the Warriors have been playing as of late, and I think they can get Utah. So, like I said, 2-3, 3-2. Like I said, there's a couple games in there that can go either way. But from what I've seen from this Nets team, I'm confident that they can at least beat Utah and Golden State.
I think that they go 2-3 at the very best. I think they're due for a letdown. I'm just being realistic in terms of they've won 6 out of their last 7. They're now traveling. They're on the road. They've been winning at home most of these games. I don't know. I just, if they go 3-2, I'm going to be extremely impressed. But I see a few losses. I think that they get a win against Utah. They get a win against maybe Golden State. Steph's going to go off, but I think the rest of the Nets team might actually be better than Golden State. Yeah, I don't know. I maybe I'm being pessimistic, but 6 out of the last 7, they're going to come down.
I've always famously been a glass half full guy. So we'll see. But like I said, tonight's game in Sacramento will set the tone. That is a fiercely tough place to play. It gets really loud in there. You're going to have to make plays down the stretch. And the Kings, they got some guys who can, hit some clutch shots too. So, tough matchup. I don't know. I think the Nets have, better interior. I think the Nets have I think Sacramento has better guard play, but I think the Nets have better size, better defense. It should be interesting.
I think the Nets are kind of in a very interesting position in that it looks like they're going to compete. They could probably be a top 5, top 6 seed, but they're probably not going to win it all this year, right?
Right.
We don't think they have the talent. But then you have a couple guys that are going to be free agents, like a Dinwiddie, like a Royce. What do you think Sean Marks is going to do heading up to the trade deadline? Do you think if they're the 5th seed, do you really think he's going to blow it up? Or is it, this is a long-term thinking type of thing, and we're not going to win this year. We'll make the playoffs this year, but we're going to reload for next year. What are your thoughts on that? It's tough.
Well, you don't want guys to walk when you can get something for them now. So I know that that's going to be, a thought process in that. But to your point, I don't think anyone expects the Nets to win a championship this year. I think that when it's all said and done, I think they'll be in the 4. I don't think they'll be a play-in team. I think they'll be somewhere in the 4 to 6 range. Maybe that's a little too high, but I think they're going to be somewhere in the 4 to 6 range. I think that if you can maybe, because as long as Ben's health is shaky, you can't afford to move on from Dinwiddie at this point. When I think about any potential moves that this team could make, I look at those wings, right? Maybe maybe you move a Finney Smith because you still got a guy like Royce O'Neal who's producing at a pretty high level, but. If maybe you, and I say this is just maybe, like I don't know shit, like what I'm saying. I just got it, but
of course, this is just your thoughts. Just your thoughts on.
But if you could maybe move like a Finney Smith, maybe one of those young guys, if they're on Long Island, if you don't think that they're a part of the team's future, if you could like flip them for like maybe. Like a creator, like I said, a guy who can, create some shots for others or some draft capital. I think maybe, right? But I think this group is playing too well together to mess with it. So I think that their best bet would just be to see how far this group can take them, right? And then kind of evaluate things in the offseason because as a former player, one thing that I really appreciate is chemistry. And you don't want to mess with chemistry, especially if you're not going to win a championship this year. Don't mess with the chemistry you do have because that could pay dividends going forward. I mean, just look at Mikal's Suns teams. They were awful for, the first couple of years of him being there. And then all of a sudden that flip switched, right? That switch flipped. So if you could move one of these guys, if you get a sense that they're not going to want to be back next year, if you can move one of these guys for maybe some draft capital or a ball handler creator, go for it. If not, I don't think you touch it. That's just me. I don't think you touch it because I don't think there's a single move that can be made that would put this team over the top, short of like acquiring Joel Embiid or something, which is not going to happen. So,
I agree with that. I think that's pretty
fair. You know what I'm saying? I mean, say you go out and get a guy like Zach LaVine. Is that really going to move the needle? I don't think so, right? And that guy, he's not a creator. He's a ball stopper, right? And this is a team that has thrived on like ball movement and player movement this year. And I just don't think you want to mess with that. If the Nets are going to upset someone in this year's playoffs, it's going to be with the roster they currently have.
I think you make a lot of strong points, especially the Dinwiddie insurance. He's essentially Ben Simmons insurance at this point. So you can't move him because then you don't have a scoring point guard to play with Mikal and Cam Johnson. The way I kind of look at this team, and Pete, I said this a few weeks ago on the podcast, they remind me of those Grizzlies teams from the mid-2000s with Conley and Gasol and Zebo, and they were always competitive and nobody wanted to play them in the playoffs. That's who I think of the Nets. Different structure and totally different type of play, but no superstar. Everybody's bought in. Guys want to see each other shine. That's just sort of the vibe I get from this team.
I can see a lot of that. But like I said, I haven't been on this beat long, but the team it just feels really together to me, right? They just feel really together. I love what Vaughn's trying to do with the group. I love everything I've heard out of the locker room. It just seems like these guys are together, and that matters in this league. Like a guy like Mikal would know it more than most. Guys like Mikal and Cam, they would know that more than most. But being together matters in this league, and I truly think I don't sense any like huge egos. Guys are playing for each other. They make these small goals and then they try to reach them. I think that stuff matters. I think over time, that's going to be what makes the difference for this team.
So the equation is radical truth plus togetherness equals winning basketball. That's what we got right there.
Yeah. I think that's the Brooklyn Nets' equation this year. They know they're not the most talented team, but they're going to be one of the most together teams, and they're going to play their asses off. And I think that's how this team plans on winning games this year.
Hell yeah! All right, we have a few questions before we end the show. This is called 3 questions in getting to know CJ Holmes. So CJ, I have 3 quick questions for you. Take as much time as you need. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Number 1. Biggest difference in covering a team on the West Coast versus in New York?
The fact that I don't have to drive the work. It's funny because my first day on the Nets beat, my first game, it was interesting because I remember when I first became an NBA beat writer covering the Warriors. And that first game, I was kind of just, I don't want to say I was completely lost, because I had been doing journalism for a while before then, but covering an NBA game is just different, right? And I felt like I stepped in on my first day and I felt like I was completely under control. I knew exactly what I was doing. So the work itself is no different for me. And in some ways, it's a little bit of a lighter workload, which, helps my work-life balance, right? In some ways, right? And I don't want my boss to think I'm slacking, you know what I'm saying? But the biggest difference for me is just, I'm out here in Jersey City. So I drive to the Grove Street Path station and I hop on the path, take the path to the World Trade Center, and then I either take that 1, 2, or 4, or 5 into Brooklyn. And that's just cool to me. I've never had to commute to work in that way. I guess it helps me save on some gas. I don't know how gas versus, trains per day will add up in the long run. I haven't been doing it long enough, but maybe y'all can give me some advice on that.
I think you're better off with trains. Trains are better. You don't want to have to drive to work.
One thing that still has not gotten old is when you get off that Atlantic Avenue, you get off at that Atlantic Avenue stop and you take that escalator up, and then Barclays Center is right there. That's just such a cool moment to me, and it makes going to work every day extremely enjoyable. So long story short, I think, the work itself is pretty similar. At the end of the day, it's telling stories. It's telling stories that deserve to be told and, keeping tabs on this team. But I think just it's colder. Got to wear a jacket. That's another big thing. It gets a little breezy out in the Bay, but nothing like the East Coast. And I'm from DC, so I know of it. I just got to get reacclimated to it. But yeah, I would just say the weather and how I get to work. Everything else is another day at the office.
You said you live in Jersey City. This is a totally unrelated question of my remaining 2. Have you been to Raza yet?
No. What's that?
That's one. I think it's the number 1 rated pizzeria in America.
Really?
If it's not Lucali, it's Raza. They're like 1 and 2.
Okay, I'll add it to the list.
In Jersey City, I went like a year ago. It was pretty damn good.
I'm gonna have to add it to the list. Then sounds good.
All right, question number 2. What has been up to this point in your career your best moment in reporting?
It's got to be Game 6 in Boston of the NBA Finals a couple years ago. Just that was a Warriors team that had no business winning a championship, and if you see what's going on out in the Bay now, that might have been their last one. If they can't turn it around here soon, that might prove to be their last one. But just that moment, it would have been a little cooler if they won it at Chase Center, right? But just that moment of when you look up at the clock and the game is out of reach and they're going to put the game away, and seeing Steph Curry collapse onto the court in tears, while he's getting booed by the TD Garden crowd. I mean, that was just it just really just spoke to the greatness of that dynasty, and how they were able to, like I said, I don't want to count them out just yet, but how they were able to put it together for one last ride. That was a pretty cool moment, man. That was really cool. Seeing the guys come up into the press conference with their goggles on, T-shirts drenched in champagne. I mean, as a reporter, that's one of the moments that you always want to be a part of at some point. And I was lucky enough to experience that within my first 5 months of being an NBA writer. So you really couldn't have scripted it any better. I mean, I walked into a organization and I got to cover a championship within months, and that was just super cool. And then, once we got back to San Francisco, I got to ride, and all the reporters got to ride in the championship parade on a different player's bus. So I was on the bus with James Wiseman and Gary Payton II. I actually sat in the back of the bus with Gary Payton, so we were chopping it up, the whole bus ride, and that was just a really cool moment. And I may not ever get a chance to cover another championship, so that's something that's always going to sit with me for the rest of my life. Matter of fact, if you guys give me a quick second.
Absolutely. Pete, must be nice, huh? Maybe one day.
Yeah, right.
I can show you a couple.
Only my dreams.
First, we got this.
Oh Lord.
That's shiny.
Lord. Anyone who's listening, that is a championship ring. Just like brilliantly just flowing in front of us.
Then you got this.
Oh no. That's awesome.
He's
showing us some champagne goggles from the locker room, which is something that me and Spen will probably never see in our lives.
So this is
I'm gonna buy them.
This is the type of stuff that I'm gonna keep with me forever. I'm a little bit of a hoarder. I make sure I pick up little things. So I already got like a little piece of the court from the Nets game a couple days ago, and then I got that Cam Thomas T-shirt. So it's just stuff I keep together as like memories of the things I covered, and the people, maybe pass it along to my children one day.
What I love about that ring, right, is in your later years, 50, 60 years down the road, your grandchild's going to ask about that ring, and you're going to be like, Steph Curry went God mode and Jordan Poole played great. And your grandkid's going to be like, Steph Curry? Yeah, I've read about him. Who the hell is Jordan Poole?
Oh, my God. Oh, man. Leave Jordan alone, man. He's finding his way. He's finding his way.
Yeah, no. Shout out to Jordan Poole. Would love him on the Nets in the future. All right, and then CJ, this is my last question out of the three. What is the most points you've ever scored in a basketball game?
I think I had 22 my senior night at IMG Academy.
All right. I was talking to Pete before this. I think that's my career high too. In JCC basketball.
It was like
16 years old.
25. I had like 4 threes, and it was cool because that was like the first time my dad had watched me play high school basketball, and he was there. And I had a broken nose, so I was wearing goggles. But yeah, that was my career high. It was never better than that once I got the Auburn. So
did you win that game?
We did.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Good. So you got 22 and a W. That matters, right?
Mm-hmm. And this was back in the day before IMG could like play and was like recognized as like a normal high school that could like play for like national championships and stuff. But a couple of those teams I had, we definitely could have competed. We had Division I talent everywhere. So
22. All right. That's high praise. CJ, thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people find you?
You guys can find me on Twitter or X, whatever they call it these days, and Instagram at CJHolmes22. And thank you for having me. And just bear with me. Still learning this team, learning more and more every day. So hopefully the next time you guys let me come on, I'll be able to give you guys a little bit more insight. But this is a good way to introduce myself to the fan base a little bit, and I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity.
No, we appreciate you coming on. You're definitely welcome back on the show. You dropped some really hard radical truth bombs today that I think we want to hear again. And
absolutely,
we appreciate you taking the time, CJ. You're always welcome back on, and we look forward to watching you cover the Nets for the rest of the season.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
All right. Thanks to everyone for listening to another edition of Fireside Nets with Spen and Pete. Check us out on YouTube and Twitter. And as always, catch you on the Fireside.